pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Our first item of business is our public comment period. It's a time where we allow 2 minutes per speaker, up to 10 minutes total, to address the board regarding any concerns that you may have. And so that is open now, and anyone that wishes to speak, please approach the podium. I'll make 3 times that call by law.
Morning, Commissioner. It's Joe Morris, 23375 Buffalo Ridge Road in Wiscoy, or Wilson Township. I want to speak to you about the county's ground and surface water and the Holden Farms CUPs, which you're going to consider today. The manure from these farms risks the water quality for our county, and you're responsible for that. This isn't my opinion. The DNR, who's responsible for trout streams, states that the manure applied on the farms, this is the farm closest to Whitewater River, near the south branch of the Whitewater River, could endanger the trout stream. So DNR is responsible for trout streams in Minnesota. Even if the MPCA ruled that the manure would not cause significant impacts, the DNR is the keeper of the trout streams. They're the ones who know about trout streams. Second, your own planning commission, when it had its hearing last month, the majority, when they voted on the important criteria about whether the projects would avoid exposing adjacent properties and natural features from significant adverse impacts from odors and surface and groundwater contamination, the majority said yes. So they believe the potential is high for groundwater and surface water contamination. So you have the state telling you that the manure spread from this project could endanger the Whitewater River, prime trout stream. Your own planning commission is telling you that the projects would expose surface and groundwater to contamination. So the county's water is in your hands. If you don't deny these permits, you're risking contaminating our groundwater further, which we already know is highly contaminated. Thank you.
Buck.
Good morning. I'm Daryl Buck from Winona Soil and Water Conservation District. I just wanted to let you guys and also the public know that 2015 the state passed a buffer law requiring a 50-foot setback on all public waters, and they also required SWCDs to make the determination if people were compliant or not, and we have to have that determination done by November 1st of this year. And the reason I'm up here is to let you know that we reviewed over about 2,300 parcels that are on public waters and sent out letters to everybody. Some of them had more than one parcel, so we ended up sending out about 1,200 letters last week. So people got letters telling them whether they were compliant or not compliant based on 2016 aerial photos. I wanted to let you know that those letters came out from the SWCD, but some of them might be getting a hold of you guys too. And some of them might be getting a hold of your staff with concerns about it. We've already received 50, 60 calls, and they just got to people on Friday. So there's been a lot of calls. I also just wanted to thank Maureen and her team that helped send out the letters. We didn't have the machinery to do all the folding and envelopes and postage and everything else. So Maureen was gracious enough to help us. I haven't got a bill yet, but it was very helpful to be able to do stuff that we weren't able to do at our office. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or our office a call. Thanks.
Anyone else wish to address the board?
Good morning, Commissioners. Doug Nopar, 29440, County 17, Winona. I'm speaking on my own behalf. I, too, stand opposed to the CUPs for the Holden Farms. I know you're all concerned about water quality. Question I have is, how will you make sure, if this operation is approved, that water quality will be protected? What will be in place to monitor and enforce, what enforcement and monitoring will be in place to make sure our water quality is protected? Secondly, on the issue of hydrogen sulfide coming off these two operations, there was I know you're all interested in facts, and there was a suggestion or assertion made at the last public hearing that from the Sour Hog Farm in Norton Township that there had been 0 or 1 detections of hydrogen sulfide on a neighboring residence. That is not true, and I encourage the staff and board to look at your own feedlot records. There's a huge file on that farm, and the detections were much higher than that, and that was half mile away. And third, I urge you to consider conditions for this farm, and I believe that the applicant should pay for the monitoring and enforcement on those conditions. By my calculations, Holden Farms, according to their website, from gross sales is somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 times the county's $45 million annual budget. They can very well afford to help cover the costs of the county's monitoring and enforcement. Thank you very much.
Anyone else wish to address the board? Anyone else wishing to address the board? Third and final time, anyone wish to address the board? Hearing none, the public comment period is closed. Next item is the approval of county board minutes.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Cavesi to approve the county board minutes of April 25th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Now, item 4.1 is the acknowledgement of the receipt of approved committee minutes for the Planning Commission's March 16th, 2017 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to acknowledge receipt of the aforesaid minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Now we have the consent comments and approval of the agenda. I would go to Administrator Fritz.
I'd like to pull items 6.1 and 6.2 for discussion.
Those items will now become items 7.01 and 7.02 as requested. Commissioner Ward.
Just a brief update on the Emergency Communications Conference that I attended, please.
Commissioner Olson.
Nothing for me.
Commissioner Jacob.
Nothing for me.
And welcome back, County Attorney Sonneman. Anything from you?
Just a couple.
Okay, let's see here. We will look for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Cavesi to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Fritz.
All right, I'll read the consent items into the record. 6.1 and 6.2 have been pulled. 6.3, approved conditional use permit to Dean and Mary Priege to allow a dwelling of less than 40 acres. 6.4, approved conditional use permit to Samuel Schwartz, allow a commercial lumberyard. 6.5, approved conditional use permit to John and Dawn Mazzella to allow a dwelling on less than 40 acres. 6.6, approved conditional use permit for Bono Farms LLC to allow changes in feedlot operation resulting in excess of 300 animal units. 6.7, approved conditional use permit to Thomas and Diane Overing, Darren Thompson, and Ron Bloom to allow a land alteration and a dog training facility. 6.8, approve conditional use permit to Jake A. Shetler, allow a furniture and cabinet business. Department recommendations. 6.9, approve resolution to acquire right-of-way for CASA 25. 6.10, approve resolution to acquire right-of-way for County Road 129. 6.11, approve resolution requesting speed zone study on CASA 44. 6.12, approve solid waste hauler license, and 6.13, confirm payment of disbursements. That concludes the consent agenda.
I move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Kavesi, seconded by Commissioner Jacob to approve the consent business as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. The next item is 7.01, which is the approval of the conditional use permit for Holden Farms Site 1. You had this item pulled, Ms. Kavesi, so.
Yes. Also, I'm glad that we're warning people, even if it is on page 691 of our agenda, of a speed zone study on CASA 44. So that's fair warning. I have been reviewing these applications. I attended the public meeting in St. Charles. Before that, I had reviewed the EW report and followed this along. I'm very appreciative of the cooperation that Mr. Holden has provided all through this process.
Could I just make one point of order? Are we handling both items at the same time here, 6.1 and 6.2?
We can. They're both similar if that's the wishes of the board.
Okay.
Okay. And as I went through this process, I still, I had two issues that kind of stuck out to me. There were more, but these two particular for today. The issue of this is the largest pig farm operations in the county, these will be. And so I want to make sure that we're being both respectful for the farmers and responsible for our water. We've got 8 million gallons of manure each year to do something with, and I think we have a responsibility to do some good with it, and I think we have the opportunity to do some good with it. So it's the volume of the manure that I'm concerned about, and it's also the monitoring programs. And I say programs because as we went through this, you're all aware there's some that are done by the Board of Water and Soil Resources, some done by this operation, some done by the state, some done by us, and there's still some obviously done by the owners and by the manure site people. So everybody's keeping records and everybody's monitoring. But I saw a gap, and that gap was related to our groundwater. I wanted a way to be as responsible as I could see about protecting our groundwater. And as I did some research on interesting Google searches, lo and behold, there is a project in Root River, at the Root River Soil and Water, Fillmore Soil and Water Conservation District, and they've been gathering baseline data for years, 9 years or so. And they've been measuring edge of field runoff. And this is at a depth, it's below the root zone, so you can capture the runoff and you can analyze what's in it. And if the farmer sees that there's nutrients in it, then they want to adjust some of their practices, because no farmer wants to waste the nutrients. And so there's best management practices they can use. There's different options. But it's also at the level before it gets into our groundwater. And so we have more information about, from the point of source, about potential groundwater issues. So to me, it's a win-win. It's being respectful of the farmers and their need to be as economical as possible, especially with these valuable nutrients. They don't want them to run off. And to us to be as responsible as we can be about our groundwater particularly. I would propose, I've got several options on conditions that I would propose, but I don't know if you want to have a discussion about this program, or I'm not sure how to proceed from here. The program actually uses, the one in Fillmore County actually uses some equipment called lysimeters. There are other options for equipment, and the process, as I was told, is they bury these containers about 5 to 6 feet into the soil, and that's below the root zone level, and then they capture the runoff, and they monitor that. You can analyze it for phosphorus, for nitrogen, for other aspects, so that the farmer has the latest information about what's going on in his field or her field. Excuse me. And so the farmer then can make adjustments. They can amend their application practices. They can do some best management practices, some row cropping, some cover crops, whatever. And they can also get some of this advice through the soil and water, obviously, through our conservation district. So to me, it's a win-win, because we can analyze and we can use the information at the farm level, and we can be a better protector, a better steward for our groundwater.
Commissioner Jacob.
I think those are all certainly good thoughts and good ideas. At this point in the process of a CUP application, I would expect that to have been vetted prior to the day that the applicant comes forward for final approval. The applicants have been completely willing to work with the MPCA. The Planning Commission held public meetings up at St. Charles, took public input. And furthermore, this feels like something that we should maybe address in our ordinance, and we should treat all applicants the same. To single out one applicant and say we're going to impose these additional conditions on you when we have how many other CUPs here today that we didn't even pull. It just feels like we're singling them out and treating them differently than the population as a whole. I don't disagree with these might be good practices. We should look at it in our ordinance. We should look at it in our comp plan. And if that's something we want to do, apply it to everybody, not just this one applicant. So I don't know if there's other discussion on it, or
Commissioner Kavesi?
I just have a couple of points. Mr. Holden has been working with us on a voluntary basis. He's already adopted a number of, he's used some risk management maps, which are not required by the county or the state. He's used other information. He's listened carefully to his neighbors. He's done a lot of work to already be singled out in a sense, because he's used that information to make changes in his proposal, and I appreciate that. So this could be one more issue on a voluntary basis, or whatever. And also, even though we're dealing with 7.01 and 7.02 as two applications, we do deal with each applicant as an individual and unique set of characteristics. So I think it is appropriate to discuss these options for individual applicants. And I'd be willing to look further about, putting them into offering. I think, these are the largest hog farmers that Winona County will have. I would like to say to future applicants, because the trend is on our CUPs that we're, but it's kind of a win-win again, because the farmer then is able to use the latest information. Those are those are maps that show more information than some of our GIS mapping. So, it's controversial in a sense, and I wish it wasn't the last minute.
County Attorney Sonneman?
If I could just weigh in a bit from the legal perspective, I think that this is what you're proposing, Commissioner Kavesi, is from a resource point of view and just being good conservation of our land and our stewardship. It's a great idea, but from a legal perspective, I think it's not properly before the board. And there's other opportunities. I mean, we've got similar programs that certainly could be looked at. Ag Certainty Program, the One Watershed, One Plan. But I would suggest that if there's support from the board, that it be referred to the Planning Commission and the planning staff for study and review, because it's a good idea, but it's just, I don't think it's properly before the board.
Commissioner Olson.
You know, I was at the initial planning commission hearing for this, and it's troubling that we, that we have impaired waters, and we continue to do business as usual with the rules that we have established through our ordinance, and it's like I have to apologize to future generations that we're allowing our groundwater to be ruined, and our streams to become impaired, and we're doing so with the rules that we have set forth. So I would love if they would volunteer to do this, but I do think that their application followed within the guidelines that we have set forth, and if anybody's failed, it's been us. So.
Oh, were you first or Maureen?
Go ahead.
I was just saying, or thinking, I appreciate your comments. I would like, one option would be to see if Mr. Holden would be willing to do this as a pilot project, and to work with his manure site appliers to start to do this, gather this information. And that would be one possibility. Another possibility, I agree that it should go to the staff and the Planning Commission for further discussion, but I would also add that the board get a presentation on this at a future date. Since it's happening right in our neighbor's backyard, I think we could arrange a visit from the Fillmore Soil and Water Conservation District people, and they could fill us in on their 9 years of work with the farmers with this program. The other thing I noticed in their brochure is that one of the sites they're using, it struck me as very similar to some of the manure application sites in the Holden applications. They plant corn, soybean, and hay. They inject hog manure, and they have 6 to 8% slopes. So they've been working with that particular farmer, and they would have data that they could perhaps share with us about that. So I would think we could have, I guess I have two proposals there. One is if Mr. Holden can step forward, maybe we can discuss the option of a pilot project, and then if we refer this to staff and to the Planning Commission, I would add that the board receive a presentation at a future date. So I don't know how we proceed from here.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward.
Oh, okay, that's how we proceed. Good point.
I think the legalities of trying to do something here at the last minute is problematic. The ideas and the concepts, I think, are great, and there's many organizations working on water quality. And, when I read about water quality in Lake Winona, and it's the ducks that are causing, the wildlife are causing a big part of the problem, and the runoff from the yards that people put all their chemicals on is a problem, too. So we can't single out agriculture as problematic. Unfortunately, the United States of America is a major producer of food for the world, and we need to continue to do that. Yes, we need to protect our groundwater and everything. I know people living in southeast Minnesota, there's some people that would like to make southeast Minnesota a park. They would like me to leave. They would like me not to live here. In fact, little story, I got a letter from Mr. Buck telling me on my property I am in compliance with the 50-foot buffer from a public body of water. Now, I don't know where this public body of water is on my property. I am very curious. Mr. Buck is going to look into it. I'm not sure where it is, but we'll find out. So, there are, and I think the Holden operation, because they have the resources and they are very good stewards of incorporating the manure, looking at the maps, and appreciate that they adjusted some of their application areas with the mapping and everything. I think something going forward could be directed to staff, but we also have to look, we got a lot of things going on, and how does this fit into the master plan with one watershed, the white water, and all those things. So I don't want to jump the gun into putting a plan into place before we've really thought this through. So I think that we should approve the applications as they were vetted through the planning department, and then ask the Holdens, and I think they have the resources and the interest to be good neighbors, as they've shown good faith in their application, to be part of a project or be part of a group to discuss how do we keep moving forward to make agriculture better, more productive, and yet protect the groundwater. Because I do appreciate Commissioner Kavesi appreciating the nutrient value of manure. I had a discussion, very brief discussion with the person that is operating my cropland, and he said he would have loved to have commercial, reduce his need on commercial fertilizer and have some big dairy or hog manure going on the land versus the commercial fertilizer he has to invest in. It would improve his crop yields and improve the soils, and it has a lot of benefit to it versus the commercial fertilizer he has to use. So I will, at this point, and again, I think we need to go forward. Okay, but go ahead. I would make a motion, but go ahead.
I just had a couple of points I wanted to make. It. I do feel, asking the applicant to come forward at this point and see if they'll volunteer for more programs, regulations. It feels a little bit like we've had that opportunity for the last 6 months through the MPCA process, the Planning Commission process, and here they are. They've met every requirement, been completely cooperative. Today is their day to have this voted up or down as is, not to kind of hold them hostage at the last second for more regulations. If they want to do something voluntarily, I think Commissioner Kavesi has, every right to talk to them after the meeting about, I'd like to see you implement these. And then I also wanted to speak to Commissioner Olson's statement that farmers are responsible for the degradation of the water quality. Farmers are responsible for the improvement in the water quality too. If you look back through the last 40 years, our creeks and streams were not nearly as clear as they are now. The turbidity is much improved. Is it perfect yet? Can we make more improvements? Absolutely. We should all look at our part of the world that we're stewards of, whether it's our lawn or our farm. I think the farmers make great strides and are much more responsible for the improvements than they are the damage. So as a farmer, that's a little offensive. But yeah, you want to make the motion, or I will? Or?
I would like to make the motion.
A motion can be made at any time.
Yeah,
I do recognize both of you, though.
Right, and they still can have discussion. Right. So I would move to approve both originally 6.1 and 6.2 with the conditions that the Planning Commission placed on the applicants.
A second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Jacob, to approve the CU conditional use permits for Holden Farms for Site 1 and Site 2. Well, items 6.1 and 6.2. Commissioner Olson.
Just one comment. I'd like to hear the recording of what I said, because I don't think I did say farmers are to blame. I said we are to blame by the rules that we have set forth that are allowing this to happen. But I never once singled out a farmer. So just to clarify.
Commissioner Kavesi.
I liked the original suggestion that Commissioner Ward was saying to approve the application and ask Holden Farms to be part of a project to further, research particularly water quality issues. So we lost that when the motion was actually presented. So to me, that's I would not vote unless we have something like that in the motion. The other thing that, in addition or along with the Root River field to stream proposal, one other option that currently is in operation in Winona County through our Soil and Water Conservation District. I'm told we have about 50 farmers who have become Minnesota Agriculture Water Quality Certified. And so this is a program and a process, again, where the individual farm sites gather information, physical field characteristics, nutrient management factors, tillage management factors, pest management factors, and irrigation and tile drainage management, which may not apply too much in Winona County. And when they have that information, they work with our soil and water to identify possible conservation practices. So the farmer can stop at step 5. They don't need to they don't need to amend their practices if they're pleased with all the information. But it's a process to gather the information and to review, probably a winter project for our farmers. But, I would suspect strongly that all of this information does exist on those manure application sites, and that one option could be that on a voluntary basis, this be recommended to the manure application site operators, whether Mr. Holden would do that through his contractual arrangement or whatever. But to me, this is a sign that the farmers are reviewing the information and using the most current information they can and the advice of our soil and water conservation people. So that would be another option. And again, if we add that phrase back onto the motion where we ask Holden Farms to be part of a pilot project to investigate some of these options, then I could support the motion. But right now I don't support the motion to approve these projects as they have been.
Brief comment regarding process. What you're really kind of suggesting is more of encouraging Holden Farms
Right.
to consider pilot project or demonstration of those types of things. And I think we should be mindful of the fact that, again, in accordance with our legal guidelines, that we cannot compel to do a demonstration project or anything like that. So if there were an amendment to the motion to say that you wish to encourage them to partake in such activity, that's fine, but there's certainly no force and rule of law in that. Commissioner Jacob, you had your buzzer on?
Yeah, with respect to the ag water quality certification, there's a lot of great work being done in our county. This is taxpayers' dollars that are, going through SWCD. There's a lot of farmers already signed up on that program, but that doesn't go with the particular sites, the 2 sites that the hog operations would be. Those would be each individual farmer that. They're the operators of these farms, not the Holdens. Those farmers are receiving product, receiving fertilizer from Holdens. So, we would only be redundantly going back and saying we don't trust the work being done at Soil and Water to bring this to the community, which has been a lot of people put a lot of effort into it. I've been very supportive and proud to say I was the 4th farmer in the state to receive that ag water quality certification on my farm. I'm supportive of that program, and I have also a certificate of appreciation for bringing that program about. So I put a lot of work into that. I think Holdens are probably aware of the program, and they should be held to the same standards as everyone else, which is voluntary compliance at this time.
Any other discussion?
I had my light.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, the Holdens are, I don't want to speak for the Holdens, whether they're aware of it or not. And some of our manure sites may already be ag water certified, and that would be, you're right, that's a real sign of analysis of information and using that information to improve the farming practices. And by the way, it improves the water quality along the way. So to me, that's a win-win. I am trying to be very respectful of the farmers and their need to have yields that are sufficient and all of that, but I want them to use the nutrients in the best possible way, which should be what they want. They don't want to waste these valuable nutrients. And I want to be responsible for our water quality. I don't think I'm being naive or nostalgic. I was told also that actually Mr. Holden Farms does not qualify for the ag water certification program unless they would do it as a corporation, which would include all of their land holdings around the state, and that's not feasible. But actually, you're right, Commissioner Jacob, it does apply to those individual manure sites, and it would be a voluntary program which could be offered. But to me, it would be a sign of quality, that people are reviewing the information they have about their practices, and that if they want to make changes, they have the data that will help them make the changes, and it's the latest and up-to-date information. I would propose an amendment to the application, or to the motion, thank you. I've lost sleep over this, believe me. No, I'd propose an amendment to the motion to say, to put back in Commissioner Ward's original language, to ask Holden Farms to be part of a project reviewing water management practices, or
I'm going to ask clarification from the attorney. Ask them to be part of or to encourage them. Ask to be part of may sound as though it has some force, but we're not in a position to do that. And so would the operative phrase be to encourage them? Because it is a voluntary program.
I would suggest that. I'd also suggest if you consider keeping the motion on the CUP separate from any recommendation to the planning department and the planning commission for a study or review, that Holden Farms or any other farms in Winona County, the SWCD, Land Stewardship, can be part of the Farmers Union, the Farmers Bureau, can be part of a project in terms of reviewing this issue, rather than tying it with the approval of the Holden Farms. Just keep it separate and ask staff to set this up, and then invite people to participate.
Would it be appropriate then to consider the original motion and consider amendments, additional motions immediately
Separately,
after?
yes,
Okay.
that's what I'm
Is
suggesting.
that acceptable, Ms. Kavesi?
so we would be back to the original motion.
Yes.
To approve as the
6.1 and
conditions,
6.2,
yeah,
and
stated by the
conditions
planning
stated therein,
commission.
yeah.
And then Commissioner Kovesi, if you felt you'd like to make a separate motion to direct staff, planning commission, and the planning commission to establish this study and review with input from the public.
Yeah, I can respond to that. I guess I was not thinking of this as such a long-term goal, but I'm being a little impatient. And, so obviously I think I do have to back off and go with the idea to either approve or not approve these applications, and then make a recommendation for a project to review water management practices with public input.
That's what I would suggest from a legal point of view, to keep it clean, and also the board's then making a statement that, yes, this is an important concept of, the water quality issues, the groundwater, and that you want to go forward and have this study.
But are we talking about, any sort of specific recommendation, because water management practices is pretty broad, Commissioner? Would it move towards the river watershed and those programs there? Or are you talking about water management practices overall?
Well, those two would be two specific options. I don't want to limit it maybe for other options, but in the sense that we could look at those two and then see what comes from further discussion.
You indicated that you were going to invite somebody from the Fillmore County
That would be.
at some future meeting?
Yeah, a proposal for us as the board that we would receive a presentation from the Root River.
I'm wondering maybe if that's the best way to move on that, but I'll leave it up to the board. Commissioner Olson.
I'm going to reluctantly support this motion. I'm going to do so with acknowledging we have a lot more work to do as a board and as a county to protect our groundwater. So I appreciate everything that Commissioner Kavesi has brought forth. I'm hoping that the Holdens will willfully engage in some monitoring, but the motion on the table, I think, applies to the rules that we have set forth right now. So that's all I have to say.
Would it be reasonable to say that we as a board all encourage the Holdens to do the monitoring that's necessary to make sure that they don't lose nutrients and such? I mean, it would be good. Isn't that a best management practice anyway?
It's a good sense, but.
So I had my light on quite a while ago.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
It's kind of gone.
Okay.
So I wanted to speak to Commissioner Kavesi's proposal that to become ag water quality certified, the Holdens have so many different farms in so many different areas. To become certified, you need to certify all those farms statewide to receive that. We have, in Winona County, we have a larger entity that has more acres that's not certified. And they operate all kinds of acres up in the Whitewater area. That's the Whitewater Wildlife Management. Tens of thousands of acres statewide. They're in the same predicament. We can't certify the state because to certify the state, they need to do all the acres. And it seems odd that we're saying we want to hold individual landowners to a higher standard than what we're holding our own state-owned property to. So, and then from a standpoint of, I understand everyone's concern with water quality here, but I spent half the day yesterday up at the Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Board meeting. Bowser was there. You probably don't want me to go through the list, but I've got 20 different water organizations that are, I mean, what we're talking about is redundant, and you're not looking at all the work being done and all the taxpayers' dollars being spent. They're spending $12 million right now to bring this 1-1 plan. That's $150,000 per watershed, 80 watersheds, just for administration, not to put a single program on the ground. And now we want to redundantly spend local taxpayer dollars, essentially not trusting the work being done by all these other organizations, not trusting our soil and water, not trusting our feedlot officer. They've put MPCA, it's been rigorous. The applicants have been cooperative. The work is being done. You're not seeing it because you don't sit on all these committees. I live it and breathe it and care about it. And we're doing the right thing. We're completely doing the right thing.
I would mention too that there are so many different organizations charged with water quality that it's really overlapping in many areas, and it does create
Overlapping. Good pun there. Overlapping.
Oh no, what I was getting at is the responsibilities are very overlapping.
Excuse me.
As you duplicate the organizations, you spend so much more on administration than you do with getting things done on the ground. So, have we pretty much talked this to death, or?
Hey, I'm ready to vote.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll do that if somebody calls the question.
I'll call it.
That's up to you. Did you want to speak?
I have a comment.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
I'm still concerned, and I'm taking this statement from the DNR letter, and it's a quote. We view the potential of manure runoff from application sites as one of the largest risks associated with this plan. So I didn't make that up. That's DNR's proposal or statement. And I'm going on some of the discussion at the Planning Commission meetings on whether one of the conditions is to be in line with the value statements of our comprehensive plan. So I feel that there's been a lot of work done. This is in many ways a model proposal, and I know it will go forward, and I know we will work further on it, I assume. But I can't support it right now because I don't feel that it is truly in line with the value statements of our comprehensive plan and those concerns about runoff.
Any further discussion?
Call the question.
Hearing none, all those in favor of approving both of those conditional units under applications under items 6.1 and 6.2, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Reluctantly, aye.
The, both items are approved on a 4-to-1 vote.
Just a quick comment.
Quick comment by Commissioner Ward.
And I think the Holdens are present, and so you have heard the conversation. All these programs are great, as Commissioner Jacob has said. There are many groups working on this. So I think Commissioner Kavesi to try and pull some of this together for maybe a general discussion, but we just need to work within the framework because we are spending a lot of time, energy, and resources currently to create something new. Would be a little problematic, but we need to work through the organizations that are already doing the work, and we would ask the Holdens to, possibly pilot a project or look at things, because I think they do realize, as anybody in agriculture, the value of that nutrient and the management. But they're not the only ones. It's every landowner that needs to be held responsible for good use of, any nutrients put on their land, including, commercial and manure. So I think you've heard the discussion. I think you know where we're coming from. We will be asking you in the future maybe to be part of another group or another discussion. So thank you.
Commissioner
And
Jacob?
I also want to thank the Holden Farms people. You have been very responsive, and I think very responsible, and I appreciate that. And I would look forward to continuing to have some further discussions with you on, particularly on the water quality issues. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Jacob?
Yeah. Frustration of hearing the DNR making comments on how the farmers should operate their land, while the DNR owns all this land and are responsible for operating it and are not water quality certified. So farmers around the area are. It's tough that they can call farmers out for something they're not doing.
Thank you. Next item is 7.1, proclamation for May 17, 2017 as Winona County Law Enforcement Memorial Day. I believe we have someone from law enforcement here, and I think it looks like the chief deputy is here. Want to congratulate you. My understanding is you've been promoted to chief deputy just recently, and so good on you.
Yes, I want to sincerely thank you for that. As of yesterday was my official first day as chief deputy.
Okay.
So a little familiar to me, being I've been for the last year as a lead deputy, so it's a nice change, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity.
Very good.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're going to do a wonderful job.
Thanks for serving our community.
Yeah.
Very much.
A question for you. What time is that ceremony on the 17th? Or is there a ceremony on the 17th?
It says noon. It does say noon.
Yep, 12 o'clock is when it'll start. They'll have a ceremony. Several speakers will be there.
Oh, at noon o'clock, right?
Yep, 12 o'clock, proclamation will be read then, and like I said, several speakers will be there also, so yes.
And you've ordered nice weather.
We're counting on it.
Should we, for the record, read the proclamation?
Yes.
And then that is in the form of a resolution, so we would adopt it. Whereas the 17th day of May is designated as Winona County Law Enforcement Memorial Day and is set aside as a day of honor for a day to honor all fallen law enforcement officers, and whereas the well-being of citizens of Winona County and the United States is preserved and enhanced as a direct result of the vigilance and dedication of law enforcement personnel, and whereas more than 700,000 men and women at great risk to their personal safety presently serve their fellow citizens as guardians of the peace, and whereas more than 140 peace officers across the nation were killed in the line of duty during 2016, and whereas all Winona area law enforcement agencies use this day to honor our fallen fellow officers who have made the supreme sacrifice for the citizens of Winona County and the city of Winona. Whereas this day also serves as a reminder of the dangers faced currently serving law enforcement officers in their day-to-day activities, and whereas our officers do not serve in a vacuum but are assisted in many ways by the citizens of Winona and Winona County, now therefore I, Commissioner James Pomeroy, do hereby call upon all the citizens of Winona County to join area law enforcement agencies in honoring our fallen officers on Winona County Law Enforcement Memorial Day. And that'll be adopted this day of 2017. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the proclamation.
Motion made by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Olson to adopt the resolution proclaiming May 17th as Winona County Law Enforcement Day. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item is 7.2, approve use of funds from capital projects reserved to replace courthouse doors. And I believe Ms. Johnson.
Good morning. I'm up here today. The Safety Committee was brought this item to discuss as far as looking at replacing the courthouse doors that have become worn. After talking about it, we talked with Administrator Fritz about potential for paying for this year, as it isn't in the budget. So he suggested that we come forward and ask to pay for it out of capital reserves. Mike's gotten quotes on doing this work, and so I'll let him brief you on that.
Well, these doors have been worn out for quite a while. They've been put in back when the courthouse was first remodeled back in the 90s. And so they're 30-some years old. The doors themselves are wore out, but what's really bad is the hardware, the latching mechanism is, even if we tried to replace it, the door itself is worn out, so it doesn't stay there. So, the best thing to do, and we checked with the Historical Society, and replacing hardware doors, so forth, has nothing to do with any historical grants or anything, so we're free to go on that. So
That's a good thing.
we put it out for bids, and we've got two that really qualified, and it turns out our local Kindle Doors is the best bid. And what we will replace is we will replace them with a removable mullion in the center to make them latch a lot better, seal a lot better. The mullion can be taken out if we need to move heavy equipment in or out, but normally the door will be a two-piece door instead of just a flapper like it is now. So, if there's any other questions.
Commissioner Olson.
I did have a question. I think you answered it, that the historical look of the doors will be the same.
They won't change at all.
Just
Same
hardware.
color, same everything. They'll just be new, and they'll be latched in the center and not with the two pins on the top and bottom that never seem to line up.
Perfect.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Yeah, I just want to say that over last Thursday and Friday, we had Law Enforcement Day, so we had every sixth grade student and many teachers and parents coming through the courthouse, all but St. Charles. And so anytime we can make improvements on both safety and economic issues, I appreciate that. And this, I'm glad we have a local,
Standing by those doors in the wintertime,
yeah.
you see they really need to be.
Yeah, so I'm glad we have a local vendor that qualifies, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
I did have a question.
Commissioner,
Yeah, I did have a quick question. Of course, you know, fresh air is good for everybody. You need an air exchange. You always tell me you need fresh air exchange, so that's a natural. But does this fall into courthouse safety? And I know there's grants and everything out there and that's a big push. So does this fall within their
Yes and no, it
guidelines?
does. First of all, it's just standard practice to have good doors.
Sure.
And to keep the weather in and out, air conditioning, whatever. Secondly, it's also a safety measure, best to have good locking doors and secure doors. Right now, these are pretty marginal. They don't, a lot of times they don't latch right. You have to fiddle with them to make them close. A lot of times people leave the courthouse and maybe the door's locked, maybe it isn't, but unless you check it, who knows?
Sure.
So-
But I mean, I guess my question is that with all this courthouse safety, is it going to meet the standard for what courthouse safety needs to be done? So in 2 years, I don't have to replace them again because they changed the standard for safety.
Oh,
Do
no.
we know that?
This will be fine.
Okay.
There isn't a safety standard on doors as far as
Okay.
I'm concerned. I mean, a good door is a good door, and a good lock is a good lock.
Okay. Okay.
They
Looks like
will be as good as they get.
Joe maybe has.
Yeah, just
can-
the grant question you
Yeah,
had.
yeah,
You know,
grants.
we did put in for a grant for the, coming through and checking people. And that, the grant had a stipulation, it had to be a program type grant. You couldn't Because we had thought about that. Maybe that would have been a way to also pay for them, but it wouldn't have qualified for those grants that are out there right
Okay,
now.
well, I did know there was a number of grants and everything. So third question, can we, do these doors have any quote value? I see all these salvage companies. They buy all this stuff out of old historical buildings. They put it on their shelves, and are they just going to be destroyed?
I think they're just going to be scrapped out there. There's nothing ornamental about them. They're just big
Okay.
doors.
All right. I mean, maybe Attorney Sonman would like to make a wall hanging out of it.
A picture frame, yeah.
Picture
okay.
frame.
You can use them as a glass cover as a
Greenhouse.
hotbed for, starting your plants early, but yeah.
I'll move to approve the use of funds from the capital projects reserves for Kendall to replace the courthouse doors.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Jacob, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi, to approve the replacement of the doors with the bid from Kendall in the amount of $16,218. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but just, I mean, maybe the Habitat Restore would take them off our hands. I don't know. I mean, I just see a lot of things that
They'll
people.
take them as a donation.
Yeah, as a donation
They won't
versus
buy
just
'em.
destroying them.
Oh,
I
no,
don't know.
they can be reused.
Yeah, I would check with them. They're local and, yeah.
The next item is the appointment of a citizen to the Parks and Advisory Committee. The committee has one vacancy, and an application was received from Nancy Goodland. So it's before you for your consideration.
I'd move to appoint.
And I'll second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Ward, to appoint Nancy Goodland to the Parks and Environment Advisory Committee. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Ms. Goodland is appointed. The next item is 7.4, discuss and provide direction for Winona County as Workforce Development Board's fiscal agent.
Yeah, I provided some information in your packet regarding this, and just to provide some background, a while ago, the Winona Workforce Development Board's executive director retired. At that time, Deed had discussed with the board the potential for separating out the various services. There are basically three service components. One is the client services, the job training that they provide in the Winona County area. The other is the fiscal agent responsibility, and then there's the administrative responsibility. The administrative responsibility is basically the executive director, the person who works with the Workforce Development Board on policies and so forth. The fiscal agent is really kind of an accounting process, or it handles the income of funds, the distribution of funds to the client, to the one-stop shop, which in this case, or in the past, has been Deed, who provides the services, pays the administrator, and so forth. So it's really a small part of the process, but it would allow the county to perform that function. I've talked to Pat Mogar, finance director. He's done some research on it with the Workforce Development Board and with Deed, and we feel that it's a minor responsibility that we can take on to help out the Workforce Development Board and help keep it focused in Winona County. We've also, based on discussions with Southeast Tech, they're interested in providing possibly the administrative services, which is really the executive director position. We'd have to explore that further. So what I'm asking at this point is for the county board basically to give me permission to go forward, work with the Workforce Development Board to create the appropriate contracts, the agreement that would make the county the fiscal agent, and then work the other agreements with Deed and with Southeast Tech possibly. So basically to explore it further and to do the work that's needed to bring it back to culmination for the board. We do have some representatives from the Workforce Development Board here and also Deed. If you have any questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to fill you in on that and provide any additional information you need. And again, I think the specific piece that right now we're looking at for the county would just to be the fiscal agent. And as I said, Pat's discussed that with the state, and it doesn't. He believes his staff can handle that. It's a minor role. There's some reporting and some checks each month to cut for the various agreements.
Commissioner Ward.
I do have a few questions. Partly because of a role that I serve with Southeast Minnesota Multi-County Housing Redevelopment Authority. That organization has a seat on the workforce development group out of Rochester, which covers most of Southeast Minnesota. And there's always been the couple of things. There's always been the question, and I've never gotten a straight answer, why Winona got their own little thing many years ago, and yet all the rest of our neighboring counties belong to this, regional workforce development. And then I do question, because of working with Olmsted County, when you become the fiscal agent, the responsibilities that are put on the county. I know Olmsted County was the fiscal agent for many small organizations, and they have, because of audits and different procedures and things, they have pulled away from those organizations. They do not want to be the fiscal agents because it has caused employment not problems, but if you had an employee of an organization, then they became an Olmsted County employee. It complicated the whole process when they became the fiscal agent. So a lot of the things that they have said no longer that they would do that. So I do question our long-term responsibilities. And then also, I think Olmsted County related, if you get into any kind of audit complications, then you're throwing that all into your auditing cycle too. So I'm just a little cautious as to what we would be agreeing to do.
A lot of that depends on what you're being the fiscal agent for. There are a number of things where the county is the fiscal agent. There are other ones. There's some that you would look at and say the responsibilities in this particular case do have those complications. In this particular case, the way the Workforce Development Board set up, and I think we have our experts right out there that can attest to this, all the employment basically is handled by the one-stop shop operator. In this case, the proposal that the Workforce Development Board has in front of them is from DEED. So DEED employs those people, the trainers and so forth and all that. There's the administrative function, which in this case, right now, we're working with Southeast Tech to provide. So there are no employees that the county would be involved with. We would simply be the fiscal agent handling the responsibilities of the money coming in and the money going out to those groups. We do have to do some reporting, although there is an opportunity right now. Some of that reporting is done by DEED, and there's a possibility that we could still contract with DEED to do that. Or Pat's looked at it and indicated that it doesn't appear to be that onerous. But there aren't any complications with personnel that I know of, and I would stay away from that if that was something that's one of the reasons that I did not propose at this point to take on the responsibilities of the administrative duties, because that is a situation where you start to get involved with personnel. I think the way Southeast Tech was looking at it is that they already have a person, that this would be another duty that person would have, and in that case they would handle that, and we would just have an agreement with them in terms of passing the money from the grants onto them. On that side also, there is an amount in each grant that covers administration. It's 10% of the grant, and that goes to the fiscal agent responsibility and also the administrative responsibility. So that money, it's not a large amount, but it's an amount that we could cover any expenses we would have and potentially Southeast Tech would have as far as the administrator goes. If you want more clear information, I think you want to.
Could I just jump in?
Yeah.
I think what Commissioner Ward was talking about is a concern. And it came up in the One Watershed, One Plan discussions. So I would ask, because you're talking about drafting the appropriate agreements, that my office be involved in making sure that the provisions regarding the fiscal agency are pretty tight, because I know that where we've run into problems before, and maybe Ms. Holte can talk about this, but the IRS doesn't look kindly on some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So,
and that's obviously any agreements. Actually, I would probably rely on you or your office to draft them.
it would just be making clear and trying to make clear that, so to minimize any exposure.
Yeah. And there are a number of. It's not like we're recreating the wheel or doing something that's unusual. It's handled in different ways by different workforce development boards, but these relationships are out there already. So there are some templates to work from in terms of the agreements and so forth. And then obviously you can protect the county from any entanglements. I'd expect that.
Commissioner Olson.
I serve on that board, and this has been something that's been come to the forefront recently, and maybe one of the representatives could explain how we are where we are today, or why we are.
My name is David Neerman. I'm from Deed. I've been involved in this since the executive director, Mr. Haney, retired a couple of months ago. Really, what is really driving this is the Federal Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. You asked about the history of why Winona County is its own little workforce service area. There are 15 workforce service areas across the state and 15 other workforce boards. Winona County happens to be its own single county workforce board and workforce service area. I don't know all the history. I do know that it happened decades ago, and the decision was made by your predecessors probably, and they went to the state, and the state approved for whatever reason that you would be your own local workforce development area with your own board that reports to you. I wish I knew more of the history than that. I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward, I just don't know all the history of that. But it was a decision made many decades ago. But one of the unusual things about that decision was that the state, Deed, was deemed the administrative entity for all of the employment programs that are normally under the purview of the locally elected official. In this case, that's your board. This is the only local area in the whole state where Deed, the state, has been the administrative and fiscal agent for your work. In every other of the 15 areas across the state, the local elected officials either receive the funds directly from the state, or they have a joint powers agreement among multiple counties where they have a nonprofit organization that takes the money and runs the programs on behalf of all of the local elected officials that are in this consortium. So it's a very unusual situation that the state has had that role in this county. Under WIOA, the act that I just mentioned, there's a very clear direction in the law that there has to be a separation between the administrative entity and the entity that actually operates the programs. So what we approached Mr. Haney and the board about a year and a half ago was saying, because of this new act, and because it really seems like a really major conflict of interest for us, for Deed, to be both the administrative entity, fiscal agent, and to be operating the programs, it doesn't seem like there should be a separation so that there's some oversight from an outside body over what's going on. And so that really what was driving, it drove this more than anything. And Mr. Haney did retire, but this was already in the works before the retirement. And this is something that Deed has asked the local board through Mr. Haney to be working on for about the last year and a half. And it's primarily driven by the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, with that separation between the administrative entity and the operator to avoid that conflict of interest, and the requirements in the law that there has to be firewalls between the administrators, the executive director, and who operates the programs. That didn't exist here because Deed was doing everything. We're kind of overseeing ourselves, which could be problematic. Hope that helps.
Mr. Craig.
Morning, everybody. Just want to make one quick clarification. The local workforce center, your local workforce center, runs through about $1.2 million a year of 4 basic programs. The largest program is a county program. It's the MFIP program, Minnesota Family Investment Program. And that's the largest one, which is about 28% of the total budget, and that has already run through Winona County. So the precedent has already been set, and the largest program is already funds that come to the county, and then we go to the county to have checks cut after every quarter. So that is already there. As to I look at it the opposite way. Why do we just have our own little one? Why are we different? First off, we like to be different if we're better. And sitting on that other board with the regional, oftentimes Winona County gets lost, and we always know that. Oftentimes, Olmsted County is amazing, but they're also a magnet, and things get drawn to them. So if funds come, federal funds and state funds come for a region, and that region is housed in Olmsted County, Winona County rarely gets their full slice of the pie. And we can go into detail about that, but we don't have to because you all have your own stories. So we look at it as quite the opposite. We're proud to be the only one in the state, and it works out better that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Back to the board.
Motion to direct staff and county attorney to come up with an agreement.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Olson, seconded by Commissioner Ward, to direct staff to move forward with discussion and draft the appropriate agreements. Any discussion? Commissioner Jacob.
Administrator Fritz, is that motion somewhat different than what was on the agenda here? Does that cover what you want?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it just in general, we just need to work out the details and bring it back to the board. So we can work in conjunction with the county attorney to get whatever agreements we need. We'll be working with DEED and the Workforce Development Board as well. So, and also probably Southeast Tech. So it's still early. We have to get all that together. So I just need general direction. I wanted to make sure before we spend any additional resources that the board was okay with it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Ward.
Just a comment. By my serving in that capacity from the other board to that board, I keep my eye on Olmsted County and Rochester, so I know what's going on there, and I have quizzed them. It was major. There was a major shift a couple years ago. Short story. Major shift. Mayo wanted every nursing position to be an RN. Okay, so I shared that with public health and everything. They wanted everybody to be an RN. Well, they found they couldn't fill the positions because there weren't enough RNs. So then they backed it off to LPNs or even CNAs to do some of their positions. So, and I shared that with the Southeast Tech president. And so there's things I learned at that meeting, what's going on in the rest of the world that I do share. And there is some advantages to it, too. So.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The next item is 7.5, receive monthly finance and budget update for March 2017.
These March numbers for the budget update. Beginning cash as of March was $13.2 million. Actual revenues were $550,000, and the actual expenses were $2 million. Ending cash in the general fund was $11.7 million. For the year, it started out at $15.4 million. Actual revenues were $1.3 million, and the expenses were $5 million. Again, the cash ending is $11.7 million. Variance in the general fund from this year to the last year was a negative 3.6 to negative 3.1. I do want to point out that Human Services at the present time is in a negative cash balance of $1.6 million. I did actually go through and figure out with taxes that would have been earned for the 3 months, that if that would have been posted, it would have been $1.3 million, so they would still be in negative $350,000 at that point. Any questions on that document? If not, we'll go to the summary cash flow. Summary cash flow started out at $21 million. Actual revenues were $5.1 million, and actual expenses are $11 million. Ending cash is $15.2 million, and that's just selected funds. It's not all of our funds. And then again, the variance numbers at the bottom are the same as the previous document. Any questions on that document? If not, we'll go to the summary budget. At the point of March, we're actually 25% through the year. If you look on the, let's see, 4th column, it talks about the percentages. And there's 2 departments that are actually over the 25%, and that would be general expenses and also human services. Different things that are happening again is out-of-home placements, and then the other thing that in March we had an extra payroll, so that's going to push some of those expenses up. But as time goes on, those should equal out also. Again, we're watching all these numbers just to make sure that we come in at budget. Any questions? If not, thank you.
Motion to approve? Review the financials? Commissioner.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ward, seconded by Commissioner Kavesi to
I think it was Jacob.
acknowledge, pardon me?
I think it's Steve. Commissioner
I
Jacob.
made the motion.
You made the motion, yeah.
Yes, you said me. That's
Oh,
okay.
I did,
That's
okay.
all
Okay. Do you want me to repeat that, or are we good?
We'll let
Okay.
Commissioner Jacob spend all the money.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We now have committee reports and communications. I have Commissioner Ward for an update.
Yeah, just,
I would also like to have a comment when there's
Okay.
time, so.
Okay. Just real quick, serving on the Emergency Communications Board, the old radio board for Winona County, Southeast Minnesota. They had their inter-out conference. I've talked briefly about this before, where the public safety in some communities and at some times take the I-35 bridge collapse or things like that that happened in Minneapolis, where there wasn't enough communication band with that people could not communicate. So this project is moving forward with creating their own band for public safety. And they're at the point now where the federal government, and they're calling themselves FirstNet, it is a federal government agency through the Department of Commerce, has put out a contract, and AT&T has won the contract to provide this service. Now, one of the big concerns for and that's for a nationwide program, AT&T does not have really good coverage in the state of Minnesota. So by mid-June, they are supposed to be coming out with maps and then some potential for mapping and such to see if AT&T can pull this off, to provide a public safety network for law enforcement, fire, emergency management. And the middle of June, they will have their proposal together. The governor of Minnesota, Governor Dayton, will have to decide if he wants the state to go along with that or create our own system. It is encouraging, though, that with the armor build-out, which kind of predated this, we, as Winona County, received a lot of federal grant dollars and spent very little money of our own doing it, other than some tower enhancements and things like that. With this FirstNet and with the partnership, the public-private partnership, AT&T would own the equipment, the towers and the infrastructure and everything to provide this, and of course the county would be paying for a service. And I'm sure the ultimate goal is that, to get all our business, both, just regular communications and everything. So by mid-June, we should have a much better idea where this is going. There is a big concern, though, of the coverage, because most people at the conference, if you pull up your cell phone, you see Verizon in the upper left-hand corner. So there is a lot of concern. But that's moving forward, so by the middle of June, which is coming up very soon, we should have much more detailed information as to where that project is going.
Can I ask a brief question?
Yes.
We'd still be 800 megahertz?
Oh, yeah, 800
Okay.
megahertz is the voice.
Okay.
The FirstNet and the AT&T is for data transmissions and those types of things. So, yes, they would link together. And just the other thing, Pat was talking about finances and everything. May 15th, at least half the agriculture taxes are due. So that's Monday, May 15th. Yeah, don't forget it.
Today's, yeah.
Yeah, Monday. At least half the agricultural taxes are due. So, thank you.
Commissioner Kavesi?
I just wanted to say, based on our discussion, that I would have a proposal to add an agenda item. First of all, but I do want to thank the board. I think we had a very thoughtful discussion this morning of all of some of the issues surrounding water quality, water protection, farmers' responsibilities, farmers' options, all of those things. So I do thank you. I would propose that we have a future agenda item to have the board, to have a presentation and discussion at the board on the Root River Field to Stream Partnership, and that would be at a future board meeting. That's also proof that I can scale back my ideas. I'm down to let's discuss this one program. So if I can get a second for that, we could add it to a future agenda.
I'll support that.
Thank you. The only other thing is to thank the CJCC, the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, the county attorney, the law enforcement, the Alliance for Substance Abuse Project, the courthouse staff, and all of the visitors we had over last Thursday and Friday for their successful law day. The program actually focused on parents who host. So the kids had a mock trial regarding a parent who served alcohol at a house party to underage students. And the pros and cons of that, was it illegal? There was some very good discussion and some very thoughtful discussion by those students, and I know they're going to follow up on it in their classrooms. So I appreciate everybody allowing us to use your staff and to tromp through the courthouse while you were trying to work. Thank you.
County Attorney Sonneman.
Well, that's a great segue, because I was going to also say thank you about the law day. It is, we've done the law day through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council since 2011. It's our 7th year, and in some of those years we actually did it twice in a year. But they found that kids weren't kind of learning in September, so they moved it back to May. So, but as Commissioner Kavesi, who was one of our volunteers, so thank you for, she led one of the groups both days. And we, just coming back from my recovery, I just think of doing 16 sessions with 30 sixth graders over 2 days. I did have to take a nap. So, but I do also want to thank, on behalf, as chair of the CJCC, all of our volunteers. Runs the gamut, and it is truly a civics lesson for the kids. And I get so many good comments from the teachers and the kids that they look forward to this every year, and they learn so much. And thank you to Winona County for opening up the courthouse to these kids, many of whom I feel old have now graduated from high school. But it's a great program, and it, other than our time, it doesn't cost any money. So the other thing I'd like to do just publicly is thank everybody for the cards, the flowers, the visits. I'm back from my heart surgery, and just jokingly but also semi-seriously, in interest of full transparency, I am now part hog. So the discussion this morning was a little, okay. Yeah. So I have a pig aortic valve, literally. It's actually a real pig valve. So thanks to the modern medicine at Mayo, I am walking around with that. But really, I was truly blessed and so touched by all of the cards and letters from many people in this room, and the county itself, administration and personnel in my office. So thank you.
We're glad to have you back. My step counter on Thursday had 41 flights of stairs, so whether that includes some from home or not, I don't know. But we're up and down, 4th floor, 3rd floor, 2nd floor, yep. But it was good.
Go.
So I have a question about the item that we're approving for the future agenda. Are we approving an approval or a presentation, or are we approving discussing whether we want to get into more than the 21 boards that I have listed here?
In the language I said that we have a board discussion and a presentation, so I think we can discuss this program option and leave it at that. Whether there's 21 other people having other options isn't the point at this time. So that was my intention.
Okay. Well, then I will have a future agenda item too. And it's not 21 people. There was 21 people at the one meeting yesterday that went a half a day. All taxpayers' dollars, per diems, staff, that takes a lot of money, and then you times that by all the individual soil and waters. It's just enormous, the amount that's going. So I think we should have a discussion about whether there's any redundancies or overlapping that we should look at, not expanding but reducing. So I think there's maybe two discussions to be had. I feel it would be better, rather than just authorizing a presentation, that takes staff time. People are going to come from another county. They're going to duplicate. I'm willing to bet it's going to be stuff that I've been over at other boards 1, 2, 3, or 4 times. I don't know. I feel like the discussion beforehand should be, are we dealing with things adequately with all the programs we have, or do we want to jump right into more presentations, more staff time? Our staff, another county staff, we're spending taxpayers' resources to have this presentation.
So maybe a general discussion before we get into particular.
I would like to, yeah.
And of course, we have a new planning director, and she's taking diligent notes. I mean, I think what Commissioner Jacob's saying is, yeah, how do we tie all these pieces together and use the best dollars, you know? And again, versus one of the angst I've had about government all along is the amount of money we spend planning and studying and administrating versus true practices on the ground that would benefit all of us. So yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces.
Commissioner Kavesi.
Okay, yeah, I agree, and this is a project that has true practice on the ground. It has 9 years of data. I would like to have a presentation on this project as a matter of education for the board and for the general public on this particular program, so that we can add it to our discussion of the full options that Commissioner Jacob is speaking to. I see the two agenda items going hand in hand. So,
Commissioner Jacob.
So, I have to remind you, Southeast Minnesota Water Resource Board, the Joint Powers Board, the TSA Board, the Soil and Water Conservation District, the Whitewater Joint Powers Board, of course, the Clean Water Legacy, Bowser, EPA, MPCA, the One Watershed, One Plan, NCA, NCRS, Ag Water Quality Certification, Buffer Laws, WACA, Shoreline and our zoning regulations, BALM, Basin Alliance for Lower Mississippi, the DNR, EQIP, that's a big one, and then Lower Mississippi Feedlot Program. These are all things that, you know, what I'm feeling is that you all should maybe come to some of these meetings rather than expand what we're doing here to yet another layer. I mean, we're doing it already. It's just that you're not on my committees. So I mean, this is duplication, it's redundant, and it's costing money, and we're only doing the same thing that all this other work that's already being done. This is a frustration of spending more taxpayers' resources for us to. You can just come to these meetings. They're open to the public. See what we're doing.
Motion to adjourn.
So, second.
Well, so I had a motion. Was there a second to discuss reducing?
I would support that
Okay, so we got 2 agenda items.
for future, yeah.
And that will take staff time also to generate that information. But thank you, that's a good
Do you want
suggestion.
them considered at the same time, or do you want them considered separately?
I'd like mine to predate that one.
I would like this one to predate that one, since it's one of the options that we could be discussing.
Well, I think you asked first.
I did ask first, thank you, whatever.
Well, my sense is that the discussion whether implied follow one, they'll follow each other naturally. They'll follow each other.
Yeah.
Without question.
That was my point.
Perhaps they should be presented at the same day or something like that. Maybe during a working session or something.
That'd be fine.
Yeah, a work session.
Okay. Who made the motion to adjourn?
I did.
Okay.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Olson to adjourn, seconded by Kavesi. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned.